Hello, I'm James Azimoha and you're watching A News. Let's see your headlines. Middle East conflict spreads as Iranian drones strike Gulf shipping near Dubai. Israel's parliament passes law making death penalty the default for Palestinians convicted of deadly attacks in military courts. And Australia investigates tech giants over social media ban compliance. The conflict between Iran, Israel, and the United States is expanding, with new attacks now affecting areas beyond the main battlefield. A drone strike on a Kuwaiti oil tanker near Dubai highlights the growing risks across the region. As strikes continue and tensions rise, concerns are mounting over how far this escalation could go.
The conflict between Iran, Israel, and the United States is escalating, with attacks now spreading beyond direct military targets. A Kuwaiti oil tanker has been hit by a drone near Dubai, triggering a fire and highlighting the widening scope of the conflict. The vessel was carrying crude oil when it was struck, causing damage and a fire on board. All crew members were reported safe, and the fire has been brought under control. Debris from aerial interception also injured 4 people in Dubai, as air defenses responded to incoming threats. Authorities say an Iranian drone also hit a telecommunications building in Sharjah in what appears to be part of a broader wave of attacks. Meanwhile, US and Israeli strikes continue inside Iran. Explosions have been reported in Tehran, Isfahan, and Zanjan as part of ongoing coordinated operations. Reports say US forces targeted a major ammunition depot in Isfahan using bunker buster bombs. Iran has responded with missile and drone attacks, targeting US and Israeli military sites across the region. Officials say the country is acting in self-defense as attacks continue. The Israeli military says it has identified missiles launched from Iran, with air defense systems working to intercept the threat. Residents were instructed to move into protected spaces and remain there until further notice. US President Donald Trump has shared a video showing massive explosions in Iran, posting the footage without explanation on social media. At the same time, reports say Trump is prepared to wind down the war even if the Strait of Hormuz remains largely closed. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says the war is progressing but declined to give a timeline for when it could end. He told US media the conflict is beyond the halfway point, adding that Israeli and US forces are close to achieving key objectives. The Trump administration, however, continues to suggest a shorter timeline, saying the war could last around 4 to 6 weeks. But Tehran is rejecting those terms and says the conditions being proposed are unacceptable.
The materials that have been conveyed to us under various titles, such as the 15-point plan, mainly include very excessive, unrealistic, and unreasonable demands. Our stance has been clear. Once we reach a conclusion, we will announce it in an appropriate way, because we have confidence in ourselves and we know what we want.
Iran also says it has not engaged in direct negotiations with the United States and maintains its position.
U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth has stated that there have been widespread desertions in the Iranian armed forces and that the coming days will be decisive in the Middle East conflict. He also highlighted that U.S. and Israeli strikes are seriously affecting the morale of the Iranian military.
Coming days will be decisive. Iran knows that, and there's almost nothing they can militarily do about it. Yes, they will still shoot some missiles, but we will shoot them down. Of note, the last 24 hours saw the lowest number of enemy missiles and drones fired by Iran. The latest intel is clear out of CENTCOM. Our strikes are damaging the morale of the Iranian military, leading to widespread desertions, key personnel shortages, and causing frustrations amongst senior leaders. But if Iran is wise, they will cut a deal. President Trump doesn't bluff and he does not back down. You can ask Khamenei about that. The new Iranian regime should know that by now. This new regime, because regime change has occurred, should be wiser than the last. President Trump will make a deal he is willing. And the terms of the deal are known to them. If Iran is not willing, then the United States War Department will continue with even more intensity.
Israel has approved a controversial new law that could significantly change how it punishes those convicted of deadly attacks. The move has sparked strong international criticism and legal challenges, with concerns over its implications for human rights and the rule of law.
Israel's parliament has passed a law making the death penalty the default sentence for Palestinians convicted of deadly attacks in military courts. The measure fulfills a key pledge by far-right allies of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Under the law, executions would be carried out by hanging within 90 days of sentencing, with no right to clemency, although courts may still impose life imprisonment in what are described as special circumstances. The law has drawn international criticism. The United Kingdom, France, Germany, and Italy have expressed deep concern, warning it risks undermining democratic principles. The Palestinian Authority says it effectively legitimizes extrajudicial killing, while Hamas has warned it could endanger Palestinian prisoners. The chief of the United Nations Agency for Palestinian Refugees, Philippe Lazzarini, said that the death penalty in Israel would be discriminatory and said he hoped the Supreme Court would block it.
Many others have been absolutely appalled by this abject law, which I really hope will be rejected by the Supreme Court. I think I'm not aware of democratic countries reinstating death penalty. We are more used to having countries abolishing death penalties. And on top of that, this would be an extraordinary discriminatory law because it would basically target only one category of the population.
European Union Commission spokesperson said that Israel's death penalty law is very concerning.
We as EU, we are opposing capital punishment in all cases and under all circumstances, and we have said that from the start in terms of the law before even its adoption in Israel. Why? Because the death penalty is a violation of the right to life, and this is a core value to the EU.
In Khan Yunis, Palestinians voiced anger and concern, saying the law deepens fears for those held in Israeli prisons and reflects growing pressure on Palestinians amid the ongoing conflict.
We did not do this to their hostages. We did not execute their hostages. Just as we preserved their hostages, they should preserve our hostages. These hostages are human, not animals they execute.
This decision, it was already unjust to arrest prisoners to start with, let alone their execution. Our feeling as Palestinians, firstly, the loss of this big segments of our people in Israeli jails is a big catastrophe. So the idea of me being a father of a prisoner or a brother of a prisoner or a wife or mother, and to hear my son will be executed, of course the plight, suffering, wound and pain increases among all of our people as a result of this decision. The simplest word we can say is not only unjust, but it is unfair, overbearing, and painful.
Inside Israel, rights groups have already petitioned the Supreme Court, arguing the law is unconstitutional and discriminatory. The court will now decide whether to hear the challenge. As legal challenges loom and international pressure mounts, the future of the law and its wider implications now remain uncertain.
3 United Nations peacekeepers from Indonesia have been killed in separate incidents in southern Lebanon following a weekend of deadly violence. 2 peacekeepers died on Monday after an explosion of unknown origin destroyed their vehicle near Bani Hayyan. 2 others were wounded. UN peacekeeping chief has condemned the attack, saying peacekeepers must never be targeted. Earlier, another Indonesian peacekeeper was killed overnight when a projectile struck near a UN position in southern Lebanon. A second soldier was critically injured. Germany's Chancellor Friedrich Merz says the Iran war is already impacting daily life in Europe, with rising costs and increased security measures now being felt in Germany.
For weeks now, petrol and energy costs for German households and businesses have been rising, and we must once again step up police protection outside synagogues and Jewish communities. If this war escalates into a major regional conflict, it could place an even greater burden on Germany and Europe, as heavy as we last experienced during the COVID pandemic or at the start of the war in Ukraine. The best outcome is for this war to come to an end as soon as possible. Once the necessary conditions are met, Germany will of course be ready to make its contribution to ensuring freedom of navigation in the Strait of Hormuz. We have already put forward extensive proposals on this matter.
European Union leaders have arrived in Kyiv to mark the 4th anniversary of the Bucha massacre and reaffirm support for Ukraine. Ukraine's Foreign Minister, Andriy Sybiha, welcomed EU Foreign Policy Chief Kaja Kallas and other senior officials in Kyiv, saying the strong European presence reinforces expectations of accountability. The delegation later visited a memorial in Bucha where candles were laid in honor of those killed. Australia is stepping up pressure on major social media platforms, with authorities preparing for possible legal action over child safety rules. The move could set a global benchmark as countries across Europe weigh similar restrictions on young users.
Australia is moving closer to testing in court whether social media giants can be held accountable for keeping children off their platforms. 3 months after introducing a world-first ban on under-16s, the country's e-safety regulator has launched investigations into some of the biggest names in tech, including Facebook and Instagram, YouTube, Snapchat and TikTok, over suspected breaches. The government is now openly preparing for legal action. Communications Minister Annika Wells says authorities are gathering evidence strong enough for the e-safety commissioner to take the case to the federal court and win.
The tricks eSafety has uncovered in their compliance update are straight out of the big tech playbook. And Australia will not let the social media giants take Australians for mugs. The Albanese government says that under-16s should not be able to keep scanning their face until they crack age assurance techniques. Under-16s should not be able to immediately open another account once they have been kicked off their original account. And parents should be able to report underage use without being asked to sign a legal letter. None of this is impossible. None of this is even difficult for big tech, who are innovative billion-dollar companies.
Under the law, platforms must demonstrate they are taking reasonable steps to block underage users or face fines of up to 49.5 million Australian dollars per breach. However, enforcing that standard is already proving complex, with companies like Meta pointing to natural error margins in age verification technology. The outcome of these investigations could set a global precedent, with governments in Britain, Denmark, Spain and Greece closely monitoring Australia's approach as they consider similar restrictions.
The United States is facing new questions over how far it's willing to enforce sanctions on Cuba after making a rare exception that highlights the tension between political pressure and humanitarian need.
The White House says US policy on Cuba remains unchanged after allowing a sanctioned Russian oil tanker to deliver fuel to the island. Washington says the move was made on humanitarian grounds as Cuba faces a worsening energy crisis.
But now the U.S. is letting this Russian tanker to Cuba. Is this a policy change, or is he willing to let more tankers into Cuba now?
This is not a policy change. There has not been a formal change in sanction policy. As the president said last night, we allowed this ship to reach Cuba in order to provide humanitarian needs to the Cuban people. These decisions are being made on a case-by-case basis. And as the administration has said, Cuba's non-functional economy cannot be fixed unless they undergo dramatic political and leadership change. But there has been no formal change with respect to sanction policy.
So you could expect more tankers to go to Cuba?
Again, these decisions are being made on a case-by-case basis right now.
Officials say sanctions remain in place, and the United States retains the authority to block or seize vessels that breach them. Cuba depends heavily on imported fuel to generate electricity and run transport, but supplies, especially from Venezuela, have declined. Combined with US restrictions, this has contributed to fuel shortages, blackouts, and rationing across the island. The decision follows remarks by US President Donald Trump, who indicated countries could send fuel if needed. Mexico's president says her country has the right to supply oil to Cuba for humanitarian or commercial purposes. She added that private businesses in Cuba are seeking fuel, with some approaching Mexico's state energy company. In Havana, residents say the Russian shipment offers only short-term relief. Cuba has gone months without regular deliveries, worsening power cuts and transport disruptions. Russia says the tanker delivered around 100,000 metric tons of crude oil. But without a longer-term solution, many Cubans say daily life remains uncertain as energy shortages persist.
All right, after the break, we'll look at the new €1.5 billion plan to boost European and Ukrainian defense industry. Stay with us.
Hello and welcome to Primetime. What a show we've got lined up for you today. In a complex world, clarity is power. Two hours live, diplomacy dissected in a spin-free environment. That's Prime Time with me, Guy Schoen, weekdays on A News.
Welcome back to A News. The European Commission has approved a €1.5 billion program to unify the defense industries of the EU and Ukraine. Meantime, this strategic move is intended to make Ukraine a permanent part of Europe's military-industrial backbone. To help us understand this strategic shift is Shamir Niazi, journalist and political analyst, joining us from Denmark. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Now, this program moves the EU from a donor relationship to an industrial partner relationship with Ukraine. In your view, what is the most significant strategic advantage of treating Ukraine as a part of the European defense base?
Well, as you know, this program, European Defense Industry Program, was launched in December 2025, and this is a culmination, this work program of 1.5 billion euros is a culmination of that effort, which was started in December 2025. And this program comprises of various sub-programs, which is including 260 million euros of Ukrainian support fund, which is to increase cross EU and Ukrainian defense cooperation and build indigenous defense industrial complexes in Ukraine and to make it more towards self-reliance because until now, Ukraine has been dependent heavily on Western military equipment, arms and ammunitions. So this effort is towards indigenization of Ukrainian military industrial complexes. And apart from this, it also comprises 700 million euros of production complexes, which would include key defense equipment, including counter-drone systems, which you know is quite relevant in the changing character of warfare. And then it was also comprise missile production facilities and ammunition. Then there's also a very important aspect of this work package, which is in expanding the small and medium enterprises in terms of defense SMEs, which would support equity funds and encourage more indigenous startups across EU. And this, you must know that this is EU, Norway, and Ukrainian cross collaboration. And this program is designed to increase the defense capacity across the region.
Now, speaking about increasing defense capacity, Ukraine is not yet in the EU, but this program allows them to participate in joint procurement like a member. What signal does this send to Moscow about the permanence of Europe's commitment to Ukraine?
Well, as you know, there have been multiple efforts towards ceasefire for the last 1 year as well. So Europe has been trying to reach a ceasefire deal as this defense collaboration effort also takes place simultaneously. So Europe is quite committed towards Ukrainian defense. And we have seen it spar with the US over the extent of support that should be extended to Ukraine. So it remains committed. And this war, you should know that this is not a war of acquiring more territory anymore, because it has been now almost 4 years and 30 days since this war was launched. So now this war has turned into more of a war of attrition. How long both sides can stand the conflict and can sustain themselves. And this is why Europe's commitment to Ukrainian defense is all the more important, because Ukraine has stood for the last over 4 years, and without Europe it wouldn't have been possible. So it's all the more important to keep supporting Ukraine. Otherwise, these efforts of over the past 4 years would go in vain.
Now, you touched upon this earlier, but I would like you to expand on that. A large portion of this funding targets increased production. From a logistical point of view, do you expect to see the creation of a safe zone factory or factories in Western Ukraine, or a push to move Ukrainian engineers into EU-based plants?
Well, the whole idea of this program is to increase cross-border defense cooperation, which includes sending in specialists from the EU countries into Ukraine and vice versa, and training and exchanges which would ultimately lead to the whole the blocs, which they call themselves as the Alliance of the Willing, to actually increase their capacities and to motivate the Ukrainian defense industrial experts to acquire training programs in Europe. So it's a mutual exchange program. And it deals a lot with indigenization and creation of more production facilities and reducing the reliance away from erstwhile specifically Washington and NATO specific cooperation. Now Europe is moving more towards indigenization and towards creation of more production facilities within Europe.
Now, we're talking about a 1.5 billion euro over 2 years. Given the scale of the current conflict, should we view this as a seed fund to attract private investments rather than a total solution for Ukraine's needs?
Well, it would also, like I mentioned, it's also comprising of a component of SMEs, which would enable equity funds to be set up under almost 240 million euros of fund. So a lot of effort is going towards that part of investment as well. But we know that, as a matter of fact, according to some experts, EU has been quite lacking in terms of funding for its defense for over the past few decades. It's estimated that it's almost $1 trillion of deficit that EU has in terms of defense, because it requires a lot of counter drone systems, a lot of missile systems, a lot of long range precision bombing systems, counter anti-ballistic missile systems. So this package is one of those efforts that Europe has long delayed, but now it's a culmination of some of those efforts.
Now, you mentioned Norway earlier. Norway is a non-EU member participating in this program. Does the involvement suggest that this European defense industry is actually becoming a broader European Atlantic Industrial Alliance?
Well, Norway has remained outside EU, but it's very much within the EEA, which is the European Economic Area, and it shares the same Schengen rules, and it is very much linked with Europe, and it's quite it's not like formally a part of EU because of its own importance given towards more say in its immigration and everything. But Norway has remained a significant part of this alliance, and it has supported European states in their exercises in Greenland as well. So Norway has remained a critical part, and but the most important aspect of this program is to include Ukraine formally into this defense cooperation, this program, which would be a multi-state industrial cooperation not seen before.
Well, Shamir, thank you very much for sharing your time and insights with us.
Thank you.
After the break, we'll take a look at the key stories shaping the region. Stay with us. Welcome back to A News. Today marks a solemn moment in history, the March days of 1918. Events that unfolded in Baku over a century ago shaped not only Azerbaijan, but the entire Caucasus region.
In March 1918, the Caucasus found itself caught in a complex web of power struggles, set against the backdrop of the crumbling Russian Empire and the turbulent rise of Bolshevism. With Russia embroiled in revolution and World War I raging across Europe, the Caucasus became a battleground of competing ideologies, ambitions, and interests. Baku, rich in oil and strategically vital, became the epicenter of violence. Bolshevik forces, driven by revolutionary zeal, exploited existing tensions among diverse communities, fueling instability. Tragically, this resulted in horrific violence, with an estimated 12,000 to 20,000 civilians perishing across ethnic and religious lines within just a few days. Historical records depict these events not simply as ethnic clashes, but rather as orchestrated outcomes of broader geopolitical maneuvering. The Bolshevik agenda was clear: use local tensions to assert control and secure the vital oil resources of Baku, which at that time produced about 7 million tons of oil annually, accounting for more than half of the global supply. Small nations and communities of the Caucasus, hoping for independence and self-determination after the fall of the Russian Empire, found themselves manipulated, caught between powerful interests far beyond their control. At the same time, the First World War created additional pressures, with major powers such as Britain and Germany also vying for influence and resources in the region. Each saw the Caucasus as a critical front in their wider strategic ambitions. Local peoples were often used as pawns, given promises only to find themselves abandoned when it no longer suited external interests. The complex interplay of imperial ambitions and revolutionary ideologies turned the region into a tragic theater of conflict. The March days were a stark example of how global interests could devastate local populations, resulting in atrocities and lasting divisions. Today, over a century later, the lessons from March 1918 remain deeply relevant. The region, home to over 15 million people today, has witnessed immense suffering yet holds enormous potential for lasting peace and cooperation. The tragedies remind us of the dangers when external powers exploit local divisions. However, today also brings hope. Opportunities for peace and regional integration are stronger than ever, especially now, with real and tangible processes underway. Recent peace negotiations between Azerbaijan and Armenia have marked a significant turning point. After decades of conflict over the Karabakh region, the 2020 ceasefire and subsequent diplomatic engagements have opened pathways to lasting peace. Both nations are now actively discussing border demarcation, transport links, economic cooperation, and restoring trust. The end of the Karabakh conflict presents the Caucasus with an unprecedented opportunity. Regional initiatives like the opening of transportation corridors promise enhanced connectivity, economic development, and stability not only for Azerbaijan and Armenia but for the broader region. These developments represent genuine progress towards mutual understanding and regional prosperity. Remembering the March days of 1918 isn't just about honoring the past. It's about learning its lessons and seizing the opportunity for peace. With concrete steps towards reconciliation and cooperation, the Caucasus region stands at a historic crossroads, with peace and partnership finally within reach. The challenge and the choice is here.
Azerbaijan is marking more than 3 decades since civilians were killed while fleeing the Kalbajar district during the First Karabakh War with Armenia. Today, the same region is being rebuilt, with residents gradually returning.
More than 30 years ago, during the First Karabakh War between Armenia and Azerbaijan, civilians in the Kalbajar district were forced to flee as Armenian forces advanced into the area. On the 31st of March 1993, groups of residents, including women, children, and the elderly, attempted to escape through a mountain tunnel towards the Lachin corridor, a key route at the time. The people were attacked near the tunnel exit. Many were killed, while others were taken captive. In the days that followed, Kalbajar came under Armenian control, and hundreds of civilians were reported killed or missing. For nearly 3 decades, the district remained outside Azerbaijan's control. That changed in November 2020 when Kalbajar was returned under a ceasefire agreement that ended the Second Karabakh War. Since then, reconstruction has been moving forward across the region. New roads are being built through the mountainous terrain, including long tunnels that now provide safer and more direct access. Residential areas are also being developed. Modern housing complexes have been constructed, with electricity, water and gas restored. Schools, kindergartens and healthcare facilities are either operating or close to completion. Authorities say the work is part of a wider program to bring former residents back. Families have already started returning to Kalbajar, settling into newly built homes after years away. Economic activity is gradually picking up. Public services have reopened and tourism projects are being planned, with the district known for its natural springs and landscape. Demining efforts are still ongoing and full resettlement will take time.
A parliamentary committee in Iran has approved the draft bill tabled by MPs to impose tolls on the Strait of Hormuz. Our Turaj Shiralilu has more from Tehran.
1 month into the Israeli-US war on Iran, Tehran is asserting its sovereignty, while a select parliamentary committee passed a draft bill to discuss excising taxes on the transit of vessels carrying oil and gas from the Strait of Hormuz. According to senior MP Nasrullah Pejmanfar, Iran is going to maintain security of the Strait of Hormuz, and for this reason, which is considered a form of service provision, it will charge transit fees. The chairman of Article 90 Constitutional Committee was quoted saying by the Parliament's news website that the strategic waterway is not blocked, rather it is shut only to hostile enemy ships. Over the weekend, Iranian parliamentarians proposed 2 urgent draft bills for discussion at the plenary sessions on withdrawing from the Non-Proliferation Treaty and on excising environment pollution taxes and charging pilotage fees in Hormuz Strait. Meantime, Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi, in a phone contact with his French counterpart Jean-Noël Barrot, stressed that any provocative act by the aggressors and their supporters, including at the UN Security Council regarding the Strait of Hormuz, will complicate the situation. He said, the passage of vessels belonging to other countries is carried out in coordination with the competent Iranian authorities. Turaj Shiralilu, reporting from downtown Tehran for A News TV.
3 people have been charged in Armenia over an alleged attempt to attack Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan. The incident happened at St. Anna Church in Yerevan during a morning service on March 29th. Authorities say one person tried to strike the Prime Minister as he was leaving the church, while another caused a disturbance with security. The suspects, 2 18-year-olds and a public figure, are facing charges including hooliganism and interfering with an official's duties. Uzbekistan is hosting the 5th anniversary of the Space Technology Conference, bringing together global industry leaders as Uzbekistan steps up its ambitions in the space sector. Sevil Rajapova has more.
Tashkent is hosting the 5th anniversary of the Space Technology Conference, bringing together more than 400 delegates and representatives from over 30 countries to discuss the future of the region's space industry. The forum comes at a key moment for Uzbekistan, as the country advances plans to launch its first national satellite by 2028 and is currently working towards selecting and training its first astronaut. This year's discussions focus on satellite development, commercial spaceflight, and expanding Central Eurasia's role in the global space economy, as countries across the region accelerate their national space programs.
We are seeing how the private sector and the government is investing a lot to the space sector. We see how the space is becoming a crucial part of economical development of the countries, would it be monitoring of economical sector, development of agriculture, development of the scientific research and others. So it is a most important time to be in a space. The first scientific small satellite is already under development by our students who are studying in Japan, in Kyushu University. They are studying their master's degree. During this master's degree, they are developing, assembling their first ever satellite. The name of the satellite was given by our respectable president, Shavkat Mirziyoyev. The name of the satellite is Mirza Ulugh-Beg. It's symbolic because Mirza Ulugh-Beg is one of the, I would say, biggest historical person of Uzbekistan.
Participants say growing demand for satellite data is driving closer cooperation between governments and international companies, as the region looks to strengthen its position in the global space market.
The advantage of our satellites is that we're collecting data every day. So we collect the data, we store the data, and the users can access the data. We have a quite rich historical archive that starts from 2016 up until now. And then we cover different areas in, for example, forestry, agriculture, water management, because there is a big environmental issues, right? For example, if we talk about the Central Asia region, there is a water management crisis, water crisis, where there is no enough water supply. So using our data is actually helps to identify those areas that are prone to the droughts, for example, and then government can take the actions.
The presence of international astronauts and private space companies reflects a broader shift towards commercialization and global collaboration in space exploration.
We have already created a know-how in that field, how to select, how to run an astronaut selection program, as well as how to get ready, make the preparations for this space program, requirements in the other half of the world, as well as comparing that as preparation program, as well as the execution program in the run in the eastern part of the world. So we are ready to provide any support that we can for our sister country, Uzbekistan, here.
The conference is also seen as a stepping stone towards the International Astronautical Congress 2028, which Uzbekistan is set to host in Samarkand, further reinforcing its ambitions to become a key player in the global space industry. It is Sivil Rajab reporting from Tashkent, Uzbekistan, A News.
China's economic footprint in Central Asia continues to grow, particularly through infrastructure financing and long-term investment projects across the region. At the same time, countries are pursuing different approaches to managing external borrowing and financial partnerships. A correspondent reports on the role of Chinese capital in the region's external debt and how Kazakhstan positions itself within this broader picture.
The share of Chinese capital in the external debt of Central Asian countries varies significantly across the region, with Kazakhstan showing one of the lowest levels. According to estimates based on data from the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank, Chinese loans account for 30.5% of external debt in Kyrgyzstan, 16.1% in Tajikistan, 13.4% in Turkmenistan, and 7.5% in Uzbekistan. In Kazakhstan, the figure stands at just 3.6%. Across the region, Chinese financing has been largely directed toward infrastructure, including energy, roads, and transport. China often acts not only as a lender, but also as a systemic investor, taking part in construction and long-term servicing of projects. Kazakhstan, however, maintains a more diversified borrowing strategy. It works not only with China, but also with European partners, the Eurasian Economic Union, and international financial institutions, reducing reliance on a single source of funding. Analysts say Chinese capital in Kazakhstan is spread across multiple projects and not concentrated in strategic sectors, which helps limit risks. In contrast, in countries with higher exposure, such as Kyrgyzstan and Tajikistan, Chinese loans remain a key development tool, but may also increase long-term financial vulnerability. Experts note that while China's model delivers clear short-term gains, over time it can deepen economic dependence. Fariza Kalimurzin, Almaty, A News.
After the break, we'll examine what an attempted attack on Armenia's prime minister means for the upcoming elections and regional peace. Stay tuned.
On World Business, we meet the boardroom leaders making market-moving decisions. And find out how leaders are dealing with continuous technological disruption.
Inside Politics delves deeply into the heart of global issues shaping our world today. Join me for your go-to source of political analysis from across the region and beyond.
Welcome back to A News. Armenia is reeling from a high-profile incident at St. Anna Cathedral, where 3 individuals were charged following an attempted assault on Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan. As the country prepares for a pivotal election this June, the line between domestic dissent and regional security is becoming increasingly blurred. Joining us to analyze these developments and their impact on the South Caucasus is Eldar Hamzali, political analyst from Baku, Azerbaijan. Thank you for joining us, Eldar.
Thank you for the invitation.
Now, 3 citizens are now facing charges for hooliganism and interference after an attempt to strike the Prime Minister of Armenia. Does this reflect a spontaneous outburst of public anger or a more organized form of political opposition?
Well, first of all, we have to look at where this incident took place. So it took place in a church, and Pashinyan, for the last few weeks, he has been visiting the different parts of the country, the so-called bus campaign. So with his team, so they travel with the bus all over the country. And the church is, now that we will look at the government-church relations for the past months. So we see that there is a growing tension between the church and the government, and personally between Nikol Pashinyan. And I think it's an incident that's very expected since the church-Pashinyan relations were tense. So it's very, I think it's a natural. Now in Armenia there are discussions about whether it was Pashinyan's aim to cause a provocation or not. But one thing is clear, that it is very natural and expected, taking into consideration of the nature of the relations between church and Pashinyan.
Now, we're just months away from the votes in Armenia. If political violence continues to escalate, what is the risk that the elections could be postponed or their legitimacy questioned by the international community?
I think this incident clearly demonstrates that it is an incident. It's not part of the organized or planned series of incidents. So for that reason, I don't think that any form of incidents will take place. So a mass protest will take place. Even the opposition parties, they understand that they can't change power in the streets by bringing people into the streets and demonstrations, and for that reason they already declared their nominations, so they're candidates for the elections. So I think now everybody is preparing for election, and I don't see any possibility for the violence or political violence or the civil unrest that could cause postponing of the elections.
Now, you mentioned or you alluded that this incident is perhaps something we shouldn't really bother too much about, but Prime Minister Pashinyan recently warned that if his party doesn't win a majority, there could be, quote, war in September. Do you see this as a realistic warning or as a political pressure?
I believe it's a political pressure for both Armenian societies because he declared the opposition, the other side, as a war party, and he claims that his government now and in future will secure the peace and stable and secure Armenia. For that reason, in order to distinguish himself and his government from the opposition, he said that we are the guarantor of the peace, and if we lose, then the war of party will come to power, and naturally the Azerbaijan's relations with this war party won't be same as with us. And it's very interesting that he gave the exact date, even just September 2026 if he lose. I think it's related with the past traumas, and this is also puts a kind of pressure on Azerbaijani side as well, as Azerbaijan didn't have any form of statement related to elections in Armenia. Azerbaijan has clearly just declared that it's internal affairs of Republic of Armenia, and they also put pressure on Azerbaijan that so if we lose, attacked Armenia. So, but I think that it's a tool for politics, the campaign, to distinguish himself from the opposition.
Now, you just touched upon what I was going to ask you next, but how does this affect the mood within the political landscape within Azerbaijan? I mean, the incident and also the statement about the war in September. How does it affect the mood in the political landscape in Azerbaijan?
Well, in Azerbaijan, the Azerbaijani government closely follow what is taking place in Armenia, and the Azerbaijani government has long known being for his pragmatic and strategic approach. I think Azerbaijan will continue closely monitor the situation in Armenia, and all forms of reactions to events taking place in Armenia will be appropriate to what messages will be sent from Armenia.
All right. Now, Pashinyan has recently accused outside forces of trying to destabilize the election. In your opinion, how much of this internal tension is being fueled by regional powers who want to see a change in Yerevan's leadership?
Well, if we take the region, include the three great powers as well, so namely Russia, Iran, Turkey, and Azerbaijan and Georgia, the regional countries, I think it's very obvious that Iran is quite busier right now. The crisis that's taking place in the Middle East, the Azerbaijan and the Turkey have a good relations with the current government in Armenia. I mean, they are taking as positive steps toward peace between Azerbaijan and Armenia, and on the other hand, there are positive steps are taking place between Turkey and Armenia, and Georgia has clearly demonstrated that they are trying to pursue friendly relations with Armenia, so they don't have much interest and stake in government change in Armenia. And we have only Russia, who is not happy about the current government in Yerevan, and I think on official level several times it has been pronounced. And one of the candidates, I think the major opposition candidates, both Robert Kocharyan and Revolutionary Federation Party, the Dashnak Sutyun Party, and Samvel Karapetyan's movement, all are linked to Russia. So at least they consider Russia as a better ally than other countries. So pro-Russian forces, literally. So we can say that Russia is the number one country who wish to see the change, government change in Yerevan.
Elder, I'm afraid that's all we have time for. Thank you very much for sharing your time and insights with us.
Thank you very much.
Well, that's all we have for now. Thank you for watching. Stay tuned to A News.